in front of me I have a Yard Machines 21-inch lawnmower, and this has a 550EX Briggs & Stratton. So this belongs to a friend of mine. He doesn't really take care of his equipment very well. This lawnmower has been sitting outside in the elements for about 2 years now, and the gas cap has been missing. I, however, think we can save this. He brought it to me hoping that I could save it. Now, the reason I think we're going to be able to save this is because this engine still has good compression. And the engine's free, but it definitely needs some work. So in today's video, we're going to do a few things. For one, I'm going to clean out the fuel tank. After that, I'm going to replace the carburetor. I'll show you how to do that. We're also going to perform an oil change, and then finally we're going to swap out the cutting blade on this machine. So without further ado, let me take the camera off the tripod and I'll give you a look at what's lurking inside this fuel tank. It's the best shot of the inside of the fuel tank that I can give you. Looks like we have at least a few pine needles, maybe a few leaves, and some other schmutz in there. So I think we're going to start with a pair of tweezers and we'll see what we can physically pick out of there. Wow. Wow. How about that? Here's a quick gander of what I pulled out of the fuel tank so far. Yeah. Now if this was outside, I'd probably blow this off, but because I'm inside the shop and I just swept the floor the other day, I'm going to vacuum all this mess out of here with my shop vac. Alright, next thing we need to do is remove the air filter housing. See how dirty this air filter is. I've seen worse. Put this all to the side. Now to remove this air filter housing, looks like we're going to have 4 fasteners. 2 of them are 5/16. And the other 2 fasteners here and here appear to be 7mm fasteners. What's interesting, this fastener is a little bit different from this one, so it looks like somebody's probably been in here at some point. Now this is the fuel tank. Here's the fuel line that runs into the carburetor. So I'm going to disconnect the fuel tank where it connects into the carburetor right here. Like. So now looking at this fuel tank, I want to remove this up out of the machine. I don't see any fasteners. It looks like it just slides in these little slots on this tin that surrounds the flywheel. So we should be able to just pop this right up. Maybe. Come on. There we go. Let's vacuum everything up again. So this carburetor is a little bit new to me because typically when I see a carburetor on a small engine, it's typically bolted directly to the engine head. However, in this case, it appears that this bracket from the air filter housing holds this carburetor compressed against the engine. This will all make sense in a moment here, but anyway, I've studied this for a little while and it seems like the easiest way to remove this is to leave the linkages attached and then just, well, this is my second time pulling it out if I'm being quite honest here, but as you can see, it's just kind of gasket sealed onto the engine. So now that we have the carburetor kind of pulled off of that O-ring gasket seal, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to tilt it slightly and we'll pull one of these linkages off and then we'll pull the other linkage off. Dumping some schmutz. There we are. That's actually pretty easy. So here's the original carburetor that came on the machine, and here's the new carburetor that I purchased. Now, typically when I go to buy a replacement carburetor, I normally look for the cheapest carburetor that I can find on Amazon, and typically I have pretty good luck with it. They normally don't require much adjusting, but it's important that you take a look at the carburetor that was on the piece of equipment and then the new carburetor and just ensure that they match and that you install it properly. So taking a look at the differences between the original one and this one needs this lever, and included in the kit is a new lever, so we'll just attempt to put this on the same orientation, like so. So that appears to operate the same as the old one. Then also we're definitely going to need to put a gasket on right here. This kit includes 2 gaskets and they appear to be identical for whatever reason. So let's go ahead and install this gasket. Now if you'll recall, there was that barb coming off the engine in which the old carburetor got inserted onto that barb. Now when we pulled the old carburetor off that barb, 2 rings were left on that barb. One was simply an O-ring, and the other one appears to be a hard plastic spacer. Now I've studied this, clean up, aisle 2. But I've studied this new carburetor, and it does appear that we have a hard plastic ring, and then slightly inside from that point, slightly recessed inside this orifice, is an O-ring as well. So I believe this carburetor is set up to be installed on the machine. So let me adjust the camera, we'll install the linkages, and then slide this puppy on. Now let's reinstall these linkages. So I'm going to start with the thicker linkage, and that's going to get connected to this hole right here. So we'll simply turn the carburetor sideways, insert that linkage into that hole like so. We'll take the other linkage, which I believe it goes in that small hole right there, so tilt the carburetor forward a little bit, try and thread it through the hole. Like so. Alright, both linkages appear to be connected properly. And we'll try and slide this housing back onto the engine. I'm wondering if I should lubricate that O-ring. Probably would be a good idea. Just going to squirt a little WD on my finger here. Get that lubed up. And we'll just slide this right on. Beautiful. Now let's try and clean out this fuel tank a little bit better. And a lot of guys always tell me, yeah, you should throw some diesel in there, swish it around, but what do you do afterwards? Well, I guess you could take the diesel and you could throw it in the used motor oil bin. I guess that'd be an appropriate way to dispose of it. But, you know, I try to be somewhat environmentally conscious, so just trying to figure out how to properly dispose of stuff sometimes complicates things too much. So we'll just shoot some ether in here, swish it around, and see what it does. Or, well, this is actually brake parts cleaner, excuse me. It's about as clean as I can get it, utilizing this method. I find that acceptable. There's an internal filter in there too that'll catch anything and prevent it from going through the carburetor, so I think we're alright here. Reinstall this back on the motor here, right in these slots. Make that connection down below. So it actually looks like I need to lift the fuel tank up a little bit in order to make this connection. There we go. Now I'll push the fuel tank back down. Make sure that that line is pressed in there. Reinstall the clamp, and that is good. So taking a closer look at the air filter housing here, obviously this butts up directly to the carburetor, that bolts right on. However, this upper hole right here, this actually connects to the CCV line, the crankcase ventilation line. Unfortunately, that line is dry rotted, and I should plug this up to ensure that no debris sneak by the air filter and go into the carburetor, which I will engineer something. So my fix, I had an extra fuel primer bulb laying around, and I just zip tied that to the port, so that way we won't have any contaminants introduced to the carburetor. So let's go ahead and reinstall this plate. I just blew out this air filter the best I could off camera. It's a little bit better. We're going to make it work. So we can go ahead and press this back in, and finally we can reinstall the air filter housing cover. Alright, let's tilt this mower on the side and see if we can't change out this old blade. You know, I've looked throughout this mower a little bit trying to find an oil drain plug. I've been unable to locate one, so what I think we're going to do, we're just going to tilt this mower on its side, remove this oil fill dipstick cap. We'll just try and catch all the oil in this bucket here. Yeah, that's working. Alright. Some nasty oil too. Yum. You know, I think 10W30 is the preferred oil for lawnmower engines, but I just have some 5W30 full synthetic, and I think we're going to roll with that. Be careful not to put too much in here. Just need to reinstall the engine cover now. Also got to ensure that the pull start engages with the flywheel. Should do. Now, if you couldn't tell, I did put a brand new gas cap on this unit as well. This is an aftermarket one. The O-ring that came included in the cap was actually too small, so I went through my drawer and I found a larger O-ring. Kind of a bad design, huh? Throw a little bit of go-go juice in her. Now, I am guessing she will smoke a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that. If she even goes. Felt her give a little pop. It's close. There you want to. Oh, so close. I call that a good repair. Thanks for watching. As always, I will catch you on the next one.